I was 17 days into my junior reader rotation at Solith Processing Station when operative Maishet broke. The station sits on the outer edge of the Verge Transit Corridor, a waypoint facility for border disputes, navigation infractions, cargo holds with mismatched manifests. It is not a combat posting. The senior staff process 4 to 6 detainees per shift, read their neural baselines, file the disposition reports, and forward the flagged ones to regional. Most of the work is administrative. Most of the detainees are compliant, sometimes confused, occasionally argumentative. Maishet had performed over 40,000 clean reads across 3 decades of active service, and had never once required medical intervention after a session. She was the steadiest operative I had worked under. I say that so you understand what happened next. The human arrived on a routine custody transfer from a patrol cutter that had intercepted her freighter in a disputed transit lane. No weapons recovered from the vessel. No contraband in the cargo hold. A navigation error according to her ship's log. She had drifted across a Concord boundary marker during a course correction, and the automated flag had pulled the cutter to her position. She was cooperative during intake, answered every processing question in accented but functional Concord standard, and sat down in the reading chair without being asked twice. Her name, according to the transfer manifest, was Lyra Cade, human, female, 31 standard years of age, civilian freight operator, no military record on file, no prior Concord detentions. Homeworld listed as Earth. I noted the name and filed it under standard intake. It meant nothing to me at the time. I was observing from the secondary console. My assignment was to monitor the scan feed in real time, flag anomalies in the neural mapping, and log the session metrics for the archive. Standard junior reader duties. Maishet was already seated in the primary cradle, her cranial tendrils extended, and cycling through the pre-contact calibration sequence. She had done this so many times that her chromatophores did not even shift color during prep. Flat gray, utterly relaxed. She glanced at her readings, adjusted a tendril alignment, and signaled ready. The human sat across from her with her hands folded in her lap. She was small, maybe a head shorter than an average Cathari, which made her roughly 2/3 of Maishet's seated height. Brown hair, pulled back and tied with a strip of cord. A faded thermal jacket with a torn pocket she kept touching absently. She looked like someone waiting for a transit permit to process. She looked bored. Maishet's tendrils made contact at the temporal access nodes. Standard bilateral read. I started the session clock. For the first 5 seconds, the feed was clean. Autonomic baseline captured. Sensory calibration nominal. Gross motor mapping within standard deviation for a bipedal species of her mass. Maishet's chromatophores stayed flat. Her respiration held steady. I noted nothing worth flagging. At 6 seconds, her chromatophores flickered. At 8 seconds, they went white. I had never seen a reader's chromatophores go white. I did not know, until that moment, that they could. The training manuals describe it as an involuntary panic discharge, a full-spectrum response the cephalopod nervous system reserves for what the technical literature calls unresolvable threat saturation. I had encountered the term exactly once before, in a case study from the Setharak front, involving operatives exposed to unshielded neural feedback from a dying warship's crew. Maishet's tendrils locked rigid, her body followed. Her mouth opened, and the sound took a full second to arrive. And when it did, it was not a word. It was not language. I have heard the sound once since, in a medical archive recording of patients exposed to unshielded drive core resonance. A vocalization that occurs when the neural system receives more input than it can process, route, or discard. The system has no instruction for what to do with the data. It screams instead. She screamed for 2 seconds. Then her tendrils retracted so violently they left surface bruising on the human's temples, and Maishet pitched sideways out of the cradle and hit the deck plating with her full weight. The human had not moved. She blinked. looked at Mashet on the floor, looked at me. "Is she all right?" she said. I was already triggering the medical alert. Mashet was seizing on the deck, her chromatophores cycling through colors I have no names for. Not communication patterns, not threat displays, not anything in the signal lexicon. Noise, neural noise. Her tendrils were curled tight against her skull, and when the medtech tried to extend one for examination, Masset's entire body flinched away from the contact as though it burned. They sedated her on the floor of the reading room. It took 3 doses before her nervous system released. The human sat in the reading chair through the entire intervention. She did not stand. She did not raise her voice. She asked once, calmly, whether she should move to a different room so the medical team would have more working space. When nobody answered, she settled back and waited with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the far wall. Commander Aelith arrived 14 minutes after the incident. She sealed the reading room, dismissed the medical team with Mashet on a stabilization stretcher, and sat down across from the human with the observation log open on her display. "What did you do?" Aelith said. "I sat still," the human said. "She touched my head, then she started screaming. I didn't do anything." I believe her. I was watching the feed. The human's autonomic readings never shifted during the session. Heart rate flat. Cortisol baseline unchanged. She was not resisting the scan. She was not suppressing anything. She was not even aware that there was something inside her worth suppressing. Aelith ordered me to pull the partial scan log. Mashet had been in neural contact for 11 seconds before her system failed. In that window, the reader's classification algorithm had flagged and auto-tagged every memory fragment it managed to index before the overload. I read the tags aloud because Aelith told me to, and because I did not yet understand what I was reading. Fragment 1. Extreme kinetic trauma. Loss of structural support. Uncontrolled freefall. High-velocity impact with a hard surface. Recorded duration of the event, 0.4 seconds. Fragment 2. Sustained thermal radiation exposure. Dermal damage consistent with a Class 3 burn, across 60% of exposed tissue. No protective intervention applied. Fragment 3. Prolonged full-body submersion in a highly corrosive fluid. Respiratory suppression. Current-induced spatial disorientation. Possible drowning event. Fragment 4. High-speed blunt force cranial impact during unregulated group combat. Multiple aggressors, no weapons, no protective equipment, no subsequent medical response. Fragment 5. Voluntary unshielded exposure to a planetary-scale electrical discharge event. No shelter sought. I cross-referenced the fragments against the human's biographical intake file. It took me less than a minute to match all 5. Fragment 1 was falling off a bicycle at age 7. Fragment 2 was a sunburn. Fragment 3 was swimming in Earth's ocean. Fragment 4 was a schoolyard fight at age 10. Fragment 5 was walking home in a thunderstorm. These were not combat memories. They were not interrogation resistance implants. They were not military conditioning artifacts or hardened neural architecture designed to damage a reader on contact. They were childhood. An ordinary, unremarkable childhood on a planet the human had described, during her intake interview, as pretty normal, I guess. I pulled Earth's classification file from the Concord Hazardous Environment Archive. It was buried 3 directories deep, behind a restricted access flag that nobody at Solith had ever triggered. Earth. Sol System. Outer Verge Reference Designation, Co Theta 9. Class 13 Deathworld. Mashet, the most experienced reader on the station, 40,000 clean sessions, 3 decades without a single incident, had spent 11 seconds inside the unfiltered sensory memory of a woman who had survived 31 years on a Class 13 Deathworld without augmentation, without shielding, without medical intervention beyond what her own species could provide, and without ever once registering any of it as remarkable. The accumulated survival load of one ordinary human life had collapsed a trained cephalopod nervous system in less time than it takes to read a standard intake form. Commander Aelith read my preliminary report without speaking. She closed the file. She looked through the observation panel at the human, still in the reading chair, legs crossed, picking absently at a loose thread on her jacket cuff. "Release her," Aelith said. "File the disposition as a navigational advisory. Process the freighter for immediate departure." "Commander," I said, "the baseline scan is mandatory under Concord processing code for all." "Release her." The human collected her jacket from the intake locker, signed the disposition form without reading it, and asked the corridor guard where she could find something to eat before her ship was cleared for departure. The guard pointed down the hall without making eye contact. She thanked him. She walked away. She did not look back. Machette has been on medical leave for 9 days. She can form short sentences again, but only with effort. She has not asked what happened to her. She has not asked to review the scan log. When the medtech suggested she might resume light reading duties within the quarter, she closed her eyes and did not respond. The neural scanner in Reading Room 2 has been powered down since the incident. No one has requested its reactivation. I filed my report with a single operational recommendation: that no Concord neural reader attempt a baseline scan on a human subject without graduated exposure acclimation of no fewer than 6 standard months, if at all. I